Welcome back to Good Politics. In the last segment, we talked a lot about the three types of Democrats. I mean, we learned that, the Democratic Party is a little bit more fractured than the Republican Party in that there's, if you split up into three different categories. Now that we have that distinction, what do we have for this segment, Dr. Wilson?
Well, Adam, we've got something very special for you. This is going to be an hour-long coverage of the rift in the Democratic Party. So we're going to stay with that theme. And what I want to do is begin by talking about something called the political cycle. Now, this is going to take a few seconds to set up, and I want you to listen to it. There was a historian, and his name was Arthur Schlesinger. And he obviously, I don't believe he was the first person to ever say this, but he was popular for saying this. He wrote a book about the cycles of American history, and he argued basically this. He said that America had fits where it was, I don't want to say selfish, but individualistic, sort of just rely on yourself and, that's it. And then it had fits where it wanted to do collective solutions, fits of progressivism. And he tried to say that there was a political cycle where you have these fits of progressivism and fits of selfishness. Now, rather than telling you when these periods were, I mean, you had New Deal and the progressives, and you had the 50s, which kind of took a break. Then you had the 60s, which wanted to do something. And then, you had the 80s come in, which wanted to be kind of different. Then you had the Clinton people come in. The question is not is there any truth to this, but what is going on now? Because after Barack Obama got elected, because of the Great Recession, there was actually some very curious things that were going on in the American political climate. And I just want to give you some stats. Republicans have held the House of Representatives 8 out of the last 10 years. The Senate, Republicans have held 6 out of the last 10 years. When Trump was elected in 2018, Republicans had 33 governors. And we also have some interesting market news. Fox News, the market share, began to increase substantially since around 2010. This is the time period when the Tea Party people broke out. You had these liberty conservatives breaking out, running for Congress and winning. The Fox News market share began to dominate. Fox began to have a share of the market that was greater than both MSNBC and CNN. That's not quite the case anymore. So MSNBC is catching up. But there was also the suggestion that radio, I know right when the Great Recession happened and Obama was elected, there was a few stories about maybe Rush was in trouble. But then all of a sudden that shifted because his share went up.
Rush Limbaugh, right?
Yeah, and now I want to use this as the last example. Conventionally, what we always had said about Ohio is that it was a bellwether state. There was a rule of thumb that political scientists had, presidency scholar has, as Ohio goes, so goes the nation. Well, I want to tell you something.
What is a bellwether state?
It means that it's representative. Look, Ohio knew who was going to win the presidential race. You didn't win the presidential race unless you won Ohio. It sort of indicated where the country was. I don't think that's true anymore, but one of the reasons why is what I'm talking about. Listen to these statistics. In the year that Trump won, Hillary lost this state by 8 points. And if you throw the Libertarian in there, either Trump or the Libertarian got 55% of the vote. 55% of the vote. Hillary got, Trump got 51.7, Hillary got 43.5, the Libertarian got 3.2. So that's 55% either wanted Trump or the Libertarian. Even in the 2018 blue wave, DeWine won by almost 4 points. That's not all that much, but this is when you were having the Democrats were winning in the midterm. So what's my point to you? My point to you is there is an interesting argument that it concerns the political cycle that suggests that something happened in the middle of the Obama administration where we began to see, I'm not going to call it a shift to the right, but it certainly isn't a shift to the left. There's something strange going on. Let's play clip number 6.
That you don't need a centrist to win. Centrism is why we have lost. It's why we lost 1,000 state house seats. It's why we lost the White House. We ran a centrist. We lost.
Did we get the whole thing?
Yeah.
It's why we lost. It's
That was a guest on Bill Maher's show. Her name is actually interesting. It's Crystal Ball. That is actually her name. Crystal is Krystal.
When I saw that, it wasn't she was looking into a crystal ball.
Right. But anyway, this is an interesting thesis. This person is like Michael Moore, very liberal.
Right.
And what she's talking about there, I think, is that during this Tea Party thing, during this conservative shift, Democrats tried to run candidates as being centrist Democrats. They tried to say, I'm a new Democrat. They did that as a theme. And that theme actually didn't work in that marketplace. And she's taking from that this idea that therefore that doesn't work, and that what would work is to actually go more to the left. Obviously, it's something I disagree with, but what I want to do is bring Michael Moore into this. Let's play clip number 1.
The majority of Americans, I'll go through it again, Bill, agree with us on minimum wage, mass incarceration, women's rights.
I agree.
Pro-choice. They're with us right now. Why not take the moment when we're in power and use it in this election?
Very powerful word. Michael Moore was the same one, probably in the same interview, he was saying that the Democrats lost by just a few votes. What is he saying here?
Okay, so I think you have to be very careful to decode it. What he's saying is that there are issues in polls that show that being traditionally progressive, being New Democrat progressive, like, we want to raise the minimum wage, we're for pro-choice. And he's saying, because these polls are there, let's seize the moment and do what? And put in the next installment, the McGovern state that we talked about last time. He's sort of is talking about opportunism.
Getting that last installment.
Right. So this is interesting. I want to talk about this, but first let's hear one more clip. Play clip 10.
And what we need is a change. So it's not just getting rid of Trump. We got the country to where Bill Maher and Michael Moore are at. Okay. Why pull back now, Bill, say we've got to go to the center
because the country isn't there. Because I'm sorry, you're lumping a lot of vague shit together. The country is for raising the minimum wage, of course. The country is not for Medicare for all.
That was it right there. He said, why pull back now? He's really pushing in. Why become centrist? He is that, I don't know, type 3 or whichever, very purist, very principalistic. He's not going to try to reach over the aisle.
Well, Len, here's the thing that I think is important. And this is, and I when I was watching this is why I wanted to do this show. This really struck me because I think it's definitely true. I'm around left-wing people a lot, so I know how they think. I would argue I used to be one of them very, very much so when I was young. But this is actually the way they think. They think that this is the chance. In other words, did you hear him say that this is not just about Trump? What he's saying is he's going to use Trump. He's going to use the fact that people hate Trump, and you dump on Trump in order to get something that people wouldn't necessarily otherwise sign on to. In other words, if the Trump let's say Romney was in office, if the Trump hatred wasn't there, he wouldn't see this window of opportunity. What the window of opportunity is the window of opportunity is to finally get a lefty in there, because Bill Clinton wasn't good enough. Because we never can get the pure one in. We can't get the real one in there. Why pull back now? Now is our opportunity to get a lefty in there. So that's kind of interesting.
So he, as a campaign strategy, almost he's saying let's hate on Trump more and get more votes that way.
Well, what's being said, I think, is the American electorate otherwise wouldn't want this. You can't win on its own. So this is why I say. This is why I say what's most important in this election for me, it's not whether Trump wins or loses, it's whether this thing happens. Because, look, we've already gone through just about half of this administration. I mean, some of my liberal friends seem to think that, the place is burning down. But America's not. We've survived Nixon. We survived. I mean, look at all the. We survived Reagan. We survived whatever.
Turd.
Right. I mean, so this is just I'm arguing it's just a political cycle. We've survived political cycles.
Right.
Okay, so it's not like this is the end of the world. For me, what I'm worried about is a mistake happening. So now this window of opportunities are going to get this McGovern state put in there when the country really doesn't want that. And
so in short, he's trying to push that third installment of the plan to get closer to the McGovern/Bernie Sanders state.
Right. And in fact, we've seen this before. This is the narrative that these people had for how Reagan got in there.
Yeah.
People didn't, in 1980, people did not vote for Reagan. They voted against Carter. Everyone knew that. You know, when that election happened in 1980, both there was high dissatisfaction. The polls showed with both candidates. People went into that booth. They did not like their choice, and they held their nose, and they did not vote for Reagan. They said, "I can't do this Carter thing anymore," and they voted against Carter. But here's the difference, and let's hear Bernie on that. This is let's play clip 11.
I don't believe personally that the majority of people in America believe in Ronald Reagan's ideology. What happened was that Jimmy Carter failed. I think that's just clear as everybody, Mr. Carter would probably admit it. And people are looking for an alternative.
He just thinks that Jimmy Carter failed. There's no...
Right. But...
Yeah, that completely highlights exactly what you're saying. Just like, maybe in the next election, we don't have to vote for Hillary or whoever. Just don't vote for Trump. Vote against Trump. We have to make sure this madman never gets in office again. So that's that might be the war call. The thing
about it, though, is that you have to remember a couple of things. People voted against Carter, not for Reagan. But then what happened? They learned after the 82 recession that it was morning in America, that these tax cuts all of a sudden caused a stimulative effect. There was economic growth, and there was the deficits. They never could balance the budget. That was Stockman's story. Stockman left and said, well, this really doesn't work as far as the arithmetic goes. But the other people said, no, wait a minute. Look at this economic growth and how this is working out, and the jobs and so forth. And in that decade, people then grew more conservative. They weren't more conservative in 1980, but they grew more conservative. Now, here's the difference. Bernie and these people, Michael Moore, probably think the same thing. That, well, once the government gives them these things, then they'll like it. Because we have had a history of America like that. Once the Americans loved the New Deal. The New Deal, they never had the New Deal. The New Deal came along, and Americans loved the New Deal. But here's the thing. Then you had the Great Society. Americans didn't really like that, And
what is the Great Society?
The Great Society was Lyndon Johnson in 1964 trying to go beyond. That was the second installment. He was trying to go beyond the New Deal state and create more stuff, to the government would give out. And it didn't look like a hand up. It looked like a handout. And traditionally, Americans want to give a hand up, not a handout. Traditionally. Now, so it had this problem with it. Now, the thing that I'm worried about, that I think is quite true, is if these people got in there, we know that the Democrats have only had all three institutions twice in the last 20 years, 40 years, and every time that they're in there and have President, House, and Senate, we talked about this, they get thrown out in 2 years, immediately get thrown out in the next election. So you're going to be dealing with what? You're either going to be dealing with divided government, or you're going to be dealing with proposals that you're going to have trouble getting through the Congress because the interest group state is not going to like it. And even, what all this is going to do is kick off a counter wave. Like, people are going to say they don't like this. You know how the platforms, look at how merciless you have these alpha and beta streams, I call them, the liberal and conservative streams going out there. Look how merciless these people were to Barack Obama and how terrible they were to Hillary Clinton. Now, what do you think they're going to say if old Bernie gets in there? So all you're going to do if you do get this opportunity and win is you're just going to kick off, ignite a fire on the other side. These people, I don't think, have a plan for winning. It's almost like when George W. Bush went into Iraq. Then they got rid of Saddam Hussein and they didn't have a plan. Then there was all kind of chaos. And so it's actually a very similar thing that I see here.